Hello my sugar plums, welcome back to my channel. Guys, today's video is gonna be a tutorial slash review of the Hippie Crafter Epoxy. Now if you have missed the first review that I did for them about the polymer clay, make sure to check this link right here so you can check the review, so that way you will know how I make this mermaid using their polymer clay. Now this tutorial is just gonna be like mostly like a review. We're gonna speed out through the the tray making itself, but we're gonna go ahead and do it. Now what I'm gonna be doing, I'm gonna go ahead and show you the epoxy they have sent me. This is their epoxy. I'm gonna be using 8 ounce. I believe I use about like 7 ounces to make this tray itself. Now for what I wanted to do, I wanted to go ahead and do like a mermaid sitting on a bunch of shells, trying to find her little treasure, just like Miss Little Ariel. So what I did is I went and place my shelf and my starfish the way I wanted them to be on the tray, and then I use UV resin to glue them together so that way they wouldn't move too much. And I went and did the same thing with my little mermaid. We're gonna go ahead and glue it to the shelf. And then what I was supposed to do here was when I first put my first layer down, I was supposed to put clear, but I completely forgot to put clear under the tray, under the shelf. But for the first layer, we're gonna be using only glitter, because I want this tray to be extremely clear, because this is a review video. I wanted to see how clear their epoxy cure, and then I also wanted to see if there is any bubble in the it's an ocean. It's gonna have bubbles. Even if we have like bubbles in it, it's not gonna mess it up the project. But I wanted to see how clear their epoxy is, because it did say on their box it's super clear and all that good stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and test it out. So first thing I want to do, I remove the seal. And guys, again, make sure you wear your gloves and your mask, and also make sure you have a very nice ventilated area when you work in it. You are gonna need it. Now I went in the first layer. We're not gonna be doing like a very thick layer on it. I'm just using probably like maybe like 100 ml of epoxy, 50 of each. And by the way, the epoxy is 1:1 ratio. You can do 1:1 by volume or 100 to 0.83 by weight. So that's what it says on their bottle, but I choose to do by volume because I'm used to it. I'm using Promarine supplies all the time, so I always do by volume 1:1, which is what I decided to do instead of by weight. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use my glitter. Again, I'm just gonna be doing a layer of glitter just because my top part is gonna be just alcohol ink, and I want it to be super clear, but I wanted the bottom part to be nice and sparkly. So I'm just gonna be using glitter for the first layer. Again, I'm gonna be using 3 types of glitter. I'm gonna be using a green, a blue, and like almost like a white or pearl. It's called Magic White. Anyway, I'm gonna link everything for you in the description box below, so you can go ahead and check it. All you have to do for all the product I use on this video, I'm gonna leave them in the description box below. You can either click on my Amazon store for you to find them, and I'm also gonna be using the Hippie Crafter Epoxy, so I will leave their link for the website also in the description box below as well. Now once I mixed my epoxy, I realized that the epoxy had a lot of micro bubbles in them, so I wasn't really sure. I'm like, oh my god, this epoxy had a lot of bubbles. But once you put the epoxy down to rest for like 30 seconds, all I was seeing is like the bubbles were rising to the top and pop by themselves. I was like so surprised. I'm like, wow, well, that's a great sign. So I went and just go ahead and mix my epoxy, use a little bit of clear to put on the tray itself, but I was supposed to use a whole lot more clear, and I was supposed to put the clear under the shelf bed itself to not have any air bubble. I ended up having 2 big air bubbles just because there was not enough epoxy at the bottom to completely fill up the shelf. But this was gonna be if I will be able to go ahead and fix it later on, guys, just putting some epoxy in it. I'll show you once we are done. But basically what I'm doing right now is just go and put my epoxy down. Again, I did the green and then the blue, and then we're gonna do the beautiful magic white. And then I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, pop the bubbles with using my heat gun. And to be fair, guys, the bubbles were popping by themselves. I didn't have to do much with my heat gun. I barely used my heat gun and my torch for this epoxy. I was extremely very surprised. So once I finish doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and let this part cure for about 6 hours before I go and put my second layer on top of it. Now the epoxy came with a pamphlet, and in the pamphlet it gave you all the direction on what to use and how to, you know, avoid bubbles and coverage charts and all these things. So make sure you refer to your pamphlet if it's your first time using epoxy and you're using this epoxy. Now I'm showing right here, you can see a lot of micro bubbles in it, but I'm gonna also show you, like, once you you know, put your epoxy down and, you know, the epoxy itself, you will see the bubbles start rising to the top and be like big bubbles, and it will pop by itself. I didn't have to do anything to minimize the bubbles or like put them in a hot water bath. I didn't have to do anything about it, which is a great plus for me. I really like the epoxy because of that. So again, I'm just gonna go with my alcohol ink. Again, I want the epoxy to be extremely clear because I wanted to see how clear the epoxy, you know, cure. So I'm gonna go again with 3 different colors. Again, we're gonna do our first green, blue at the bottom, and then we're gonna go with the lightest blue and then the darker blue on top. And then basically what I'm end up doing is just go and had my epoxy, do a little bit of wave. We don't need a lot of wave in this project. Again, it's all come down to see how clear the epoxy is gonna cure out, because, you know, I love wave, doing wave in my ocean when I do ocean, but this time around I want it to be a lot of clear. So I only end up doing like the 2 layers. You guys know when I do my ocean, I do at least 3 or 4 layers just because I want to have a lot of depth in it. But this time around I didn't want to use any sort of mica powder in it. I wanted it to be super nice and clear. One thing that I'm gonna stress about this video or this epoxy, you have to make sure that you are working in a well ventilated area, because later on I'm gonna be showing you the only con that I found with this epoxy is that it does fumes a lot when using your heat gun with it, or your torch. Not your heat gun. It didn't fume when I used my heat gun, but when I used my torch later on, it did fume a lot. Now what I'm doing right now, I'm just using some water bead or water bubble bead to put around my mermaid, and, you know, around the ocean, mostly by where we have the shelf, just to make it pop a lot, because you know, we don't have like a lot of dimension in the ocean itself. Basically you just have the very clear blue water and the very nice sparkle water in at the bottom. I wanted the ocean to be nice and sparkle. Now once I'm done adding my pigmented resin down, I'm just gonna be using some clear resin to just kind of make it look more organic, because the clear resin is a lot heavier than the colored one. So when you put it down, it will push the color down and just give you like those clear little patches, and I think it's beautiful. Now what I did is just like I used like probably like 2 spoons worth of clear resin. I went and mixed like 1 drop of my casting craft white in it, just to do my wave. And basically I'm just gonna focus the wave around the shelf and the mermaid. We don't want a lot of wave. I just went quickly with my torch, and then I'm gonna use my heat gun to blow out the low wave that I made, and then I'm gonna be using that small heat gun to just use in the area that's too close to the mold, because I didn't want to mess up my mold. And now I'm gonna be showing you guys. You see me using my torch, and I'm using it on really low fire, and you can see it does fume a lot. Now that's the only con that I found with the epoxy, because it does emit a lot of fumes, so I had to go and open like both side of my window to make sure that it's not too, you know, very smoky inside. And be extremely careful because you don't want your epoxy to caught fire. It's not that the epoxy is burning, I'm showing right now, it's still nice and clear, but the fume is very a little bit too much, but other than that it's nice and clear. Now what I'm doing right now, I did went over it and put like a clear coat after a couple of hours, just so I can brush my Mermaid to make it nice and shiny, to look like it's wet, like, you know, because it's in the water, so you want the Mermaid to be nice and wet and shiny. So after that I'm done, and all I have to do, I just went and leave it overnight to cure. And then the next morning, guys, I was so impatient. I was waiting to see if it's gonna, if the tray is gonna be super clear, if it's gonna have a lot of bubbles in it. And I came in the morning, remove it, and I was extremely surprised to see how clear and shiny and glossy the epoxy was. I was very surprised because I seriously did not thought that the epoxy was gonna have like this clear, you know, very nice and clear coat and super shiny. I did not expect that. I was like thinking that maybe we'll have a lot of bubble, just because, you know, when it's when I put the epoxy down, the bubble was rising to the top by itself. So I'm like, maybe, you know, once the epoxy set in the mold itself, the bubble will rise to the surface just the way it did with, you know, when I was mixing it. But nothing happened. There was no bubble inside. The epoxy was clear, super glossy, very beautiful. And now I'm gonna be showing you the only part that I did that was my mistake. I have nothing to do with the epoxy. That was my mistake. If you're gonna do this tutorial, guys, or if you're gonna do anything that have like a lot of like shelf, or like, you know, anything that's gonna block the bottom part, because the way the machine, you know, it's a shell, it's like have like that hollow inside. Now you're supposed to put like a clear coat there before you put your shell on top. I did not do that. I was hoping that the epoxy gonna, you know, drip down in the shelf, but most of them it did drip down, you know, under the shelf. But those two ones that have these big air bubbles in it, it was like the biggest one that I have down there. But again, I'm gonna fix that. I will just put some clear epoxy inside the shelf, and this gonna cure it, because you don't want to leave it open like this, just in case you don't want like anything to go inside and start getting moldy or anything like this. It's gonna be yucky. So I'm just gonna go ahead and fill those up a little bit later on. But this is the finished result, guys. The epoxy itself is super clear, very shiny, super glossy, no bubble inside. And guys, let me tell you, I love this tray. Now the only con again I found with the epoxy is because it does fume a lot. But again, so you need to work in a ventilated area when you're working with epoxy anyway. So this is it. I'll leave the link for their product in the description box below, guys. You can check out the product directly on their website or on Amazon. I'll leave the link also for their product on Amazon. Now if you like this video, don't forget to go ahead, like, subscribe, and share with your friend and family, guys. I will see you on the next video pretty soon, and you know the drill, guys. Until then, be blessed and stay blessed. I love you guys. Bye. Mwah.